Well, we'll get going. Thanks everybody for coming. We're going to tell you a little bit about what Invested Life is, and we'll get into our topic for this evening a bit. We're focused for Invested Life is to look at finance and leadership, and we're looking at potentially alternating back and forth, but overall kind of trying to dive into different areas of finance. This evening specifically, we're going to look at real estate. I'm going to share a little bit of some things that I've done and hopefully inspire you to dive in, maybe try something, or see if it might be right for you. It's been a blessing to me to learn it and get involved a bit. So I want to share that a bit. We'll probably do the first bit of just going over that, and then the last half, we'll be here for an hour. We're going to try to wrap up 6:30 sharp, and then do some Q&A here. We can do it throughout. If something's just itching away and you got a question, just go for it. But otherwise, we'll kind of have some Q&A towards the end there, and hopefully get some interaction. Like, hey, what's been maybe a question you have, or maybe a story of something one of you guys have done, or whatever that might be. So I think the neat thing about real estate is it's you can't really get away from it. It's going to be a part of your life in some way. You might not own it, but you got to live somewhere, so you're going to be on real estate all the time, obviously. But if you do anything with a business, you're either going to rent or own it, and it's also a really neat way to have a passive income and still have a solid career, or even if you have a business, you can still do real estate on the side as well. So that's been it's created a lot of opportunities by being able to dive into real estate a bit. So little experience of how when I was just young growing up, we talked money at home a bit. You know, I heard this story about if you take a penny a day, what would you rather have, $1 million or a penny a day for 30 days, and it doubled every day? It's like, whoa, take the million, but it's actually within 30 days, if you double it every day, I think it's like 5 million or something. It's definitely significantly more, and that's ultimately what real estate does. It just keeps going, even though you get it started, and you can if you do it well, it can just keep compounding, and it doesn't take a tremendous amount of effort like maybe running a business takes a ton of effort, and there's a lot more components going on there. Before I was 16, I had ended up making a little money and I loaned it out actually to Abram. I accumulated around $1,000 and loaned it out on 8% interest, and that was kind of the first taste of, oh wow, money can make money and I don't have to do anything. So that was really neat. So it was just a taste of that. And then as I was 16, started getting my own money and covered my own cost, and bought a car and had my brother sign a loan so I could get a car, and started had a vision. Like I was like, I want to do real estate. I want to have a rental property someday. So tried to not spend it all, even though Dad said I shouldn't get a four-wheeler. I did. And then the engine blew up, and I wish I wouldn't have. But learned that lesson as well. But bought my first rental property when I was 20. It was the first year we got married. It was right after it was in 2010. So right after the 2008 housing crash, which didn't affect the Midwest too bad, but it definitely affected Florida, I had a brother living down there Brother Walter, and we ended up buying a property that was actually in a short sale, which there was a couple moving parts there, but navigated that, and the house cost $55,000. So it was very scary. Buying your first rental property, buying your first property is just, it's scary, and you'll never actually figure out everything when you're starting something like a rental property. You can look and you can try to research and you try to learn all the things, but you'll never actually know it all. You've got to start, and then you learn beyond that, and that's what I've found in anything. It's scary, but you start, and then you start learning so much more. So don't be afraid to start. And that's what we did. Jumped in and bought a house, took a little trip down to Florida, drove down there, all scared and excited at the same time, and signed the closing papers at the realtor's office, and we fixed this thing up. So we showed up, and it's kind of a dump. I mean, it was bad shape. The place was all growed up and weedy. Ended up putting around $20,000 into a refinance, or into a repairs. So we fixed it up. We put a new metal roof on. We did stucco around the outside, trimmed it up, trimmed the trees, trimmed the palm trees, painted the inside, rearranged a couple walls, and a few major things like the roof and stucco, but it got to where it was looking pretty good, and it was rentable, and it was presentable. And so we ended up, I had put about, the 20% of that $55,000 in, so $11,000 in, loaned the rest, did a loan for the $44,000. So I had $11,000 in, put another $20,000 in for fixing it up. So I had about $31,000 into this, and that was my life savings to that point, from working a job, putting some extra to the side, and knowing that I wanted to do something eventually. I looked at a lot of properties prior, and it just didn't add up. It didn't make sense. This one, with some advice from an older brother and dad and a few other people, was like, yeah, this is probably worth, I'd do it if I was you. Okay, so that's how it was. It's being around other people, that having other advice. And I want to show you what can happen with the snowball effect. That's why I'm going through the numbers on this particular property. After we cleaned it all up and got it looking good, this is probably 6 months later, we had a tenant in, and I think it might have even had, no, it didn't have a tenant when we got one in after we fixed it up there a little bit. And then we went and did an appraisal on the property with the bank, because to get the loan on it, the bank says, well, we need to know what this thing's worth. You paid this much, and they never loan you more than what you pay for it typically, but we've put extra in it and said, okay, let's get an appraisal. So it appraised. Luckily at that point, property values were kind of on the, I don't know if they were really on the mend, but they weren't going down anymore. It had stabilized. And so it was probably within a year we refinanced, and it appraised at 80, what was that number? Yeah, it appraised for $85,000. So when a typical bank loan, it varies a little bit, but you can typically loan on real estate for 20% down. So that's what we did. We did a cash out refinance. So we loaned as much as we could. 80% of it we loaned, and the 20% was a down payment. So I think that like $17,000 down payment, that's what we had to leave in it. But at the closing of the refinance, I got $37,000 back out. I'm like, whoa, what just happened here? That's more money than I even had in it. This is fun. I'm like, oh, okay. It like created money. I had more cash than what I started with. And I knew exactly what to do with it. Buy another one. So after buying one property, I ended up with more money than I started with. Plus, I'm getting rent every month for, at that point, it was $750 a month, which was better because of the whole financial situation. It was a good time. Typically, if you put $50,000 in a house, you might get rent for $500,000 or $500 a month. It kind of holds that. Add another, just take a zero off or a couple zeros off there. So I repeated that process every year for the next 5 years. As soon as, and I don't know if it was exactly on the year, but that's what you can do with, if the scenarios have to be right for that to work. Just because you go buy a property and slap some paint on it and go to the bank and say, I want a cash out refinance, doesn't mean they're going to value it anymore. That's where if you connect with someone else that's doing real estate, they might notice some things when you go look at a property. There's a few things you really want to look at. A roof is a good spot to start. You want to make sure it, because that can be, you look at the high dollar items, the things that cost a lot to repair. Windows, furnace and air conditioners, HVAC, and a roof. That's a great place to start. You look at other things that may potentially be issues, but that's where you want to connect with somebody else. You want, ideally, if it's your first one, connect with the other people that are doing it, and that's what you can do by showing up here. I'd say at least 50%, probably 50% of the people here have bought rental properties and stuff. So you start talking to the guy beside you. Hey, how did you do that? What did you do? And then you can bounce ideas off and connect that way. That's a very fortunate situation when you can make a property give more back. But so that's just a starting point. If you look at, I did not realize that when I bought the first house that's even possible. I had no clue. It's like I just figured maybe after 10 years it might be okay. And I had no clue you could do that fast and that it could create value. Not to mention, the whole time that's happening, there's rent coming in the whole year. And then what I like to do is get one property, get it in shape, get it stabilized, where you have your 20% down, and then just let it do its thing and go on to the next one and set it up. Park it there, let it do its thing, and then you can keep building that. If my angle was always more the investor side than the property manager. Some people like to go manage the property and find the tenants, and do the review to make sure they're good tenants and all that. And you can, but I always go the route of letting a professional do that, a property manager that knows the rents, they know the area, and they know the market. And there's a lot of reasons to do that. Unless it's your primary business, I wouldn't do that. Unless it's your primary business and that's really what your goal is, that's fine. You can learn it and get into that. What I've learned, what I've seen by watching other people be their own manager, is they don't get a premium rent because they're scared to ask for it, or they don't know how. They don't vet the tenants properly. They get bad tenants. There's the biggest downside is they don't get the premium rents. They don't know the market, so they settle for less, and when you can get a lot more. So typically, you just pay your property manager 10% of the rents. It varies in different areas, but that's a pretty good round number. They collect it, they deposit it, and you might write out a tax bill at the end of the year, or pay property taxes, and set up your automatic payments. It's a beautiful thing, and you don't get caught up in all the day-to-day. When the toilet don't flush, they call the property manager, hire someone to do it, and you don't. The other thing that does is you can look at real estate anywhere. You don't have to do real estate in your local hometown, so you can run out there in the middle of the night. It's actually, sometimes it's better to buy real estate out of town for that reason. There's several other areas that I want to discuss and get into as well regarding some of the value creation you can get from taxes. There's and all these other things. I didn't know that before I started, but so there's you can depreciate when you buy a house. It depreciates over 29 and a half years. There's different tax tables. And so every year you can offset some of your income from that. Any interest you're paying on a mortgage you can offset that against your income to lower your tax bill. And there's even more things. There's something I'm thinking about, so I'll touch on it. Cost segregation study is something you can do. And typically that isn't as worthwhile on a single-family home. If you start getting into larger buildings, if you can use it on commercial buildings and houses and stuff too, but there's costs associated with it. So usually that's more like a $500,000 plus. Cost segregation studies work really well, and what that can do for you is, if you do the study and you break out the electrical and the HVAC and the light bulbs and the electrical outlets and all the things down, you have someone do a study for you. You can end up taking approximately 30% of the value of your property deducted off the first year. So it really accelerates the depreciation, which can lower your income tax. So instead of paying that tax, you can reinvest it, and it gets investing on the right side. So we can, if you have more questions about that, you can hit me up on that as well. Some people ask, well, do you? I don't want to have debt. I just want to do everything debt free. And that's a fine place to be. Like if that works for you, great. There's nothing wrong with that. Real estate is to really leverage real estate the right way. You want to have it's a great opportunity to leverage, and it's the perfect place to do it. When you're buying toys and cars and fun things and using your credit card, that's not good. But on real estate, it can be a good thing. And how that can work is, so go back to the house example. We put, let's just call it $100,000. $100,000 home. You put the 20% down, and you loan the 80% from the bank. So you put $20,000 investment. That and you loan the 80% from the bank. So you own 100% of that property, and if you have it for a few years, let's say 10 years, the value of that property is most likely going to appreciate. It's going to go up. You have 20% that you put in, but you're getting 100% of the appreciation, the increased value. You're getting all of that. You're building wealth, and inflation happens, appreciation happens, and your property value is going up with inflation. At the same time, that 80% of your debt, your loan, you can lock it in to where it doesn't appreciate, it doesn't inflate. There is no inflation on the debt. The debt is locked in while everything else is going up in value. That's one of the little secrets of real estate. It's a leverage thing that works wonders. The neat thing about a rental property or apartment complex, a rental, is you can put the 20% in. Banks loan against it because it's solid. And it cash flows. To buy farmland, if you only put 20% down, it's not going to make its own payments on cash crop or whatever. You won't be able to. It's a different piece, and there's all different types of real estate. But a rental property, if you can come up with a 20% down payment, it can make its payments. What my experience on a per door, whether it's a rental property or apartment complex, it can bring in an extra approximately $10,000 a year. That can be all over the board, but that's kind of what, and in a mid-range that I've dealt with a lot, that's what it can do for you. That's pretty broad, but as a whole, you can do that. So that's a little bit on debt and loaning and what that can do. You're getting all of the appreciation, and plus you're getting the rent, it's making its payments, and it's just kind of parked there. It's doing all that, and you're not even thinking about it. So that's the beauty of a rental property. You can still have a full-time career, a job where you're go to school. It doesn't matter what you're doing. You can still do that full-time, and with a few days out of the year, you can manage that property. So I want to share a little bit more, just to create a little bit more vision. Maybe you can grasp what I'm trying to throw out there. So we first property was bought in 2010, and in 2019, we ended up with 5 homes over those first 5 years or so. Had them for a couple years, and did the refinance pretty much on every one. But then they just sat there for a couple years and paid down the mortgage. They just started going, and the rents were good. What happened is $750 rents, because of where the rents went up while houses went down. So it worked well. We bought well, and rents just continued to climb and climb and climb. So these things, they did well. They I think till the end, they were $1,000 a month rents coming in on these same properties with similar numbers. So other opportunities were showing up. I'd see apartment complexes and 10 units and 12 units and all these, and I'd look at them and run the numbers. I'm like, nope. I'm going to park on my little houses because they're doing great. I don't want to change. I'm just comfortable here. I had set a goal that I'm going to have 10 houses paid for in 10 years. after about 2 years in, I'm like, whoa, this is really cool. This is going to work, and we're going to go for it. And then I got comfortable. I'm like, whatever. It doesn't matter. They can just do their thing, and I'm good. I'm like, well, I can't find anything else that has that amount of return for what I have in it. But what I wasn't factoring in was the inflation, what the properties were worth. Property values went up. They were going up faster than the banks even realized it. So even if I did an appraisal, it wasn't going to appraise for what it would sell for because values were going up aggressively. So my mentor was like, look, you've got to do something. You've got to sell them, and then you can pull out that value and reinvest into a much bigger deal. And I couldn't get it. But finally, he got it through to me. The only way to, because of the situation where the values had went up that fast, the market was paying more than what an appraiser. I'm not a big fan of appraisers, by the way. Appraisals are just whatever the guy behind the notebook writes down. They don't keep up fast enough, and they can get. It's part of the system, and you got to do it. But I knew I wasn't going to get the appraisal because I tried, and they weren't coming in. Like, okay, so if I sell them, I think we ended up doing a multi-package deal, all five, one buyer, for $150 each is what it ended up being. So, but the only way I could get that value is if I sold them, and I could get the max value, and then you can do the same thing I had been doing for the first 5 years, and I could re-leverage that into a 20% on a lot larger deal. And that's when I started doing apartment complexes, which is a lot simpler. Now instead of 5 property bills every year and 5 tax bills every year and 5 roofs to watch and all that, it was, it's one roof, one property tax bill, and it gets simpler. Plus, your property managers will give you sometimes better rates when you have a consolidated property, and you gain some scale there. But there's some real estate guys that will say, all right, don't even start. If you can't buy at least a 16 unit, don't even start. And I get the philosophy behind it because of the simplicity factor, but the message I want to get across is just start. Just start. If you start small, you can make mistakes, and they're small mistakes. I'd almost lean towards the idea of starting small because it's not as, you just start. That's the big thing, for sure. Trying to think of a couple other pieces there. There's a lot of things that you can start learning and finding out that I could talk till you're blue in the face about tax strategies and cost segregation and they don't kick in until you're doing it. It doesn't start making sense. All of you are a lot brighter than I am, but I was really slow when it came to those things, and I had to live it and do it before it made sense on that angle. Start today. That's the real secret. You just got to start. You got to get something going. I like to do properties that there's different, even in rental properties, you can buy a trailer house based off, that's going to have really good cash flow and returns. It's going to return on the overall investment year over year much higher than a than a solid foundation single-family home because the rent's better than the cost. But then you get different things that go with that. Typically, it might be a different class of tenant. And the big thing is your property value is just going down every year. It's not going up. Very seldom does it go. I mean, it's possible, but overall it's just going down. And that's why I like to get middle of the road or a better quality, because you can do so much with appreciation. That's the real win over the long term. You get it bought, you're 20% down. It sits there and makes the payments. You don't have to put more into it. You never want to put yourself up to where you have to dig out of your own pocket to make the payments. I would never recommend that. If you have extra and you want to put more in, that's great. Chuck it in, but don't put yourself in that situation. Let it make its own payment. If it can't fund itself, make its own payment, maybe you need to get a little more down payment to it. It's endless the amount of things you can do there on real estate. Find somebody that has some experience and go that route. But that's I'll share another thing that real estate really even this was probably 4 or 5 years in. I had just bought. Me and the banker were kind of going back and forth. He was telling me I need to slow down. I'm telling him he needs to speed up because this is working great. And he was probably smarter than I was at the time, but it did work out. And then just finishing up the last property, and the opportunity had came up to start a business, start metal wholesale. And I didn't have a penny because everything we're making, we're putting in. I was working, my wife worked for a few years before we started having children, and we saved. I forgot to mention that all that investing I did, it was just on a standard paycheck, just a W-2, working a job. It wasn't anything great. If I got a 25 cents, I remember getting a few 25 cents an hour raises, and I about jumped through the roof because that was going to make a difference. And the overtime I worked was going to be a little higher, and it was more to put towards a real estate. I could see a vision of like, that's going to work. So all of that happened. I was not getting, I did not have a high-paying job of any sorts, teenage, low 20s, and that it was all just from saving and building it up, being disciplined on what I purchased. Needing some funds to start a business, and I'm like, oh man, I don't want to sell these properties. I'm just getting them. I don't know if that's even going to help because I'm leveraged out against them anyways. And this was probably it was probably 5 years in. I had just finished up the 5th purchase. The first couple had paid down some. A few years the rents had paid down some. Property values were increasing rather aggressively because the rents kept going up because people couldn't afford to buy their own homes. There was a housing crash. They didn't have money. Rents were just increasingly going up. Everyone was they couldn't make their own payments, but yet the situation when property values were going up. So I called up the one banker that had first three of the houses, said, hey, I'd like to do a second mortgage on these properties because I needed to figure out how to get some money so I can invest in the business. And we ended up pooling those three of them together and pulling a second mortgage, which would probably be tough to do today, and for good reason. But they looked at the numbers, and I still had a steady income. I still had a steady paycheck, and I was living below my means. I was living with extra, and they looked at that, and they're like, well, It could, worst case scenario, but the properties were making more than what their rents, what their mortgage payments was, and they did it. So I ended up pulling a down payment to start a business. It would have never happened if I didn't have real estate financing me in the meantime. So that's about all the inspiration I got on that's what real estate can do. I've learned so much so fast, and it just, you can't even think all that up. But it's little steps that build and they grow, they compound, and if you get to a spot where one is paid off or a couple are paid off, the beauty of that is, say you have two that are paid off and you get the third one, now you have these two, both of their rents, plus the one you just bought. Now you got 3 rents going to one, just pounding away. And pretty soon it just compounds so fast. Maybe Neil will bring a graph or something next time. So that's it's a snowball effect in your favor that it's hard to believe, but it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing, and it's not hard. It doesn't take. It takes stepping in and facing that fear. So, love to hear if there's any questions, experiences. What are some Q&A here? Anybody have something that's just, hey, I wonder, yeah, that sounds great, but what about this?
Why did you start in Florida, and could you have duplicated them results in the Midwest at the time?
Yeah, that's a great question. Why just start in Florida, and could have we duplicated the results in the Midwest at the same time? No, those results I had would not have been the same here in the Midwest. There is something to say about where you're at, and it's part of understanding the market a little bit. If that same story 4 years earlier could have been a disaster, because the reason why is property values, it wouldn't have been a disaster. The reason I'm saying that is the value of the homes were too high for what the rents were. And you were able to do too much. There was a lot of people just riding that wave up with inflated property values. They'd buy one and kind of do what I just told you, but on the top end of the market where it's just exploding. And that was a rare situation. I mean, not rare, but it was a big deal in that 2008 crash. And that's a really good lesson here I'll bring out, and then I'll go back to the Midwest thing and the difference. So the same home that I purchased for $55,000 was selling 2 years prior, maybe 3 years prior, for probably $250,000. So that's, if you ever find yourself in a situation where values have dropped that much, what is that percentage?
It's 20%.
I mean, it was 20% of what it was, say, 3 years prior. You can, and this was the logic. This is what my dad was saying. He's like, that's an opportunity. He's like, that property value could drop another 50%. If you buy it at $50,000, it drops another 50%. You're still fine. You're okay. You're not going to screw up. Like, it was a low risk situation based off the circumstances. So that was a unique situation, but there's good logic you can learn from that. What was the value 3 years ago? 5 years ago. Look at that when you're buying them. What has the property values been? Has it been a steady growth, or has it been just massive? Is it out of line? So the Midwest tends to stay, that's more your coastal and your big city, high population, vulnerable areas maybe. The Midwest tends to be very stable. So the same, you can do similar things. What I did is I reinvested in the Midwest locally, and even if the appreciation isn't that aggressive, it doesn't matter. The rents do the same thing. The value of the home should be based off of what the rental income is. So right now, in the last 5 years, I've done some stuff in Kirksville and Ottumwa, and I haven't seen the aggressive appreciation of the property value, where maybe West Des Moines was a little hotter, Florida's still been kind of hot, and different areas are more aggressive, and different property types, lower income, middle, high end, that can vary as well. The beautiful thing about a mid to high end property is that if property values go down, or if rents go down, you can go down too, and you're still the preferred place to live because it's a nicer home. So there's a little bit of a buffer there, but you still got to make the payments. Does that give some context to your question there? Yes, sir.
So you said it would have been disaster if you would have bought it 2 or 3 years earlier. What would a disaster look like?
Yes.
You
So
still probably could have made the payments on it, right?
I don't know what the rents were 3 years prior. That's the missing question there. If rents were, they were probably a lot. I don't know if they were much. I don't know what the rents were. If it was a $250,000 home and the rents were $3,000 a month, it would have been fine. But when your value of your home, if you had a $200,000 loan on that property and it goes down to $100,000, you no longer, your bank's going to call that loan because they have the ability to. Your asset that you own is over leveraged. You're underwater. And they're going to be like, the faster we sell this thing out before it goes down any further, the better off we're going to be. And they're going to just sell it out on you. They're going to say, well, your equity isn't good. And they'd have that ability.
If you kept making your payments on time, it wouldn't happen though. The bank probably won't call your loan on it.
It'd be up to the bank. It really depends on the bank's situation. But no, you wouldn't think so, right? But if they're in a situation where they want to, they can. And it depends on their financial situation. A lot of those homes, people couldn't afford their payments, and then they went back to the bank. That's why the values dropped, because the economy dropped and then the housing prices dropped as well.
So in that disaster scenario, if you would have put a bigger down payment on it, maybe doubled your down payment, and the loan was called, you would have probably lost more money on it.
I mean, there's a potential, yeah. It was a risky market, and everybody that was buying in that market, they knew it was risky, but they were I don't know if they knew, but they were doing it. It was too good to be true. And everybody kind of knew it was too good to be true. But some of them, yeah, they just, hey, you can't go wrong. It's like when you can't do anything wrong. I heard some stories there. I wasn't personally in that, but that's not your everyday standard situation. That was a big time housing crash. There was government and bank stuff going on. It was a odd scenario. So don't want to. It's kind of like the opposite of where we're. I'm not trying to scare you out of doing real estate, but there is scenarios that you can be aware of for sure. Yes, sir.
Do you have a threshold for a ROI, like a return on investment on, say, middle to lower class rentals?
If I have a threshold on return on investment for lower class to middle, what I like, if I find a property that is looking good, I'll look at kind of how I alluded to earlier. If it's a $50,000 property, I would want the rents to be $500 a month. Yeah, and that'll
1% a month.
Is that 1% a month? Yeah. And that gives you a lot of times. It gives you the extra 2 months for some other things, but that's just kind of a base area I look at, and then I'll dive in deeper and do a whole. I keep an app. I haven't done any in the recent year, but I keep an app with the different. You put the inputs on and the cost and all your expenses, and it can show you what that's going to look like and your interest and your bank loan, and oh yeah, this is going to work, and there'll be a little extra. That's a pretty vague answer, but that's where I go for a starting point to see if the property will pay for itself. Then I get down in the weeds. Yes.
Maybe just a range in that, referring to the question, like on a high-end property, I think the lowest you want to be is 0.8% your monthly rent. And then on your lower-end properties, you want to be in that 1.2%. Just because the lower-end property, if on an older property, you might have more repairs, more maintenance coming up. But that's a pretty good range to, if you're within that band based on the value or the level of the property, I think you're fine.
At a 1%, you can buy or sell, and you're kind of at an okay spot, is how I've looked at it over the years. And it's just, if it's better than that, great. And if it's less than that, maybe see about looking at something else. But. Yes, sir.
So if you were gonna buy a house or an apartment complex, would you want it in would you want it to be in a nice area of town or a bad area of town? Obviously, you want the nice one, but typically what you see there is the cash flow is less in the good part of town with a nicer, newer building, and the cash flow is higher in the worst part of town.
Yeah.
So which would be your preferred property to look at? The one that's making big cash flow right now, or the one that's a little less cash flow, but it's in a better area of town?
Yeah, exactly. Which property would you want to go with? One that has better return, that might be older or in a worse part of town, or one that is performing maybe not as good, but it's a higher quality. So that's your tip. Part of that is maybe another piece of that is the higher quality property. A newer property typically doesn't have as good of cash flow or return because there's not going to be near as many repairs on it. A brand new property, the return isn't typically as good because you don't have air conditioners going out and all that. So that's something to simply answer your question, I would go with the nicer one. It's going to be, you're most likely going to get a higher quality tenant that's going to take a little better care, probably a little better communication. Either can work. And then if it's the quality of the building, I like to go with the nicer one as well. It's just less, typically it's just less calls, maintenance, and less where the having to deal with, there's just less issues overall. There'd be less times that the cops get called out to the property or something like that. Yes, Neil.
Do you have any thoughts on, so why real estate, why not just do stocks or retirement account?
Yeah, why not just do stocks? I think stocks can be a great option as well. Setting up a 401k and a real estate account, there's nothing wrong with that. I haven't personally done that, so I'm not the guy to give a great answer on that. My opinion has always been to go. I've just went towards the real estate. I feel like there's more. I feel like you have more control of it. There's the reality is the guys that you're putting when you're investing in a 401k or stocks, it's just somebody else taking your money and investing it and getting a better return than you are. That because they're getting the appreciation, whether it's business or real estate, and I just as soon build that myself and get that knowledge and learn because you can use that the rest of your life. Yep. Yes.
If you're looking for a property, is there something you look for, whether it's a single-family home or apartment? Is there something in a town? Do you want to go close to college? Or what's something that stands? When you go to a town you wouldn't know, where do you go? Where do you start looking?
Yeah, how do you identify what part of town you want to buy a property at? I haven't got super strategic in that personally. What I like to do is look at the property. I'll go do it. Most of the ones I've done, not all of them, I've either looked at or had someone else look at for me that I trusted in the area. We'll do a drive-by and be like, hey, what's the rest of the neighborhood look like? Are we in a decent neighborhood? Looks like it's, what do the cars look like? Are we working, does it look questionable? Because it can make a difference. What does the neighborhood look like and questionable? You can get really detailed and go into, what jobs are there around there and what's the school district. School district can make a big difference, but I haven't experienced that too much. I guess in Kirksville, we have some rentals that are fairly close to school, and that does make a bit of a difference because you can get college students that are walking to and from the school. They can actually walk or bike without having to have a car. So in that situation, it worked out, but I probably could do a better job of due diligence. I don't have a lot of great insight on that. But,
Thank you.
Yep. It's scary.
I know we're running out of time. Is there any good resources to gain more knowledge on real estate, like podcasts or books or anything that you'd recommend?
Yeah, that's an excellent question.
Maybe anyone in the room would.
Yeah, I'm trying to think where I learned about real estate. A book that helped really align was Rich Dad, Poor Dad, by Robert Kiyosaki. That's not specifically real estate, but it lays a good foundation of understanding asset versus liability. I have seen some things on YouTube. I'm not sure if I'm still subscribed to that. Yeah, here it is. What is this guy called? Commercial Property Advisors. I guess that's more a multifamily. I've watched some of their videos, and I've found them helpful for apartment complexes on that end. Anybody else have something they really love to watch on? Or
Yeah, there's a monthly meeting called Invested Life that gives some pretty good pointers on that.
Invested Life, yeah, perfect. That'd be a great one you subscribe to as well. Good idea there.
Bigger Pockets has some good stuff.
Bigger Pockets, yep. Yes.
What's your strategy to find these properties? Do you have a real estate person? Do you have just cold calls or just know people?
Yeah, excellent question. How do you find a property that you want to purchase? Quite a bit of looking. One thing that is I didn't put a lot of attention to earlier, I'm going to hit on that first, is for me, a big deal, if I find something, a big deal to me is can I find a property manager? Is there a property manager or multiple property managers in that town that I can connect with? So before I buy any property, I'll look, but hey, this is looking good, and then I'll figure out who's the property manager going to be, because I'm not going to manage it. I know that. So that's one little key note to that. It does depend a little bit, what you're looking for. A lot of what I've looked at more recently is more the apartment complex, but single-family homes are for sale all over. You obviously online, you can find properties just on online and stuff, but reaching out to a local realtor is probably the best way to do it. Here locally we have several realtors, and they know what's going on. They have an idea of what would make a good rental property and what might, and they can start pointing you in the right direction. And then between talking to realtor, property managers are a really good place to start, actually, because they know who owns the property, who's selling them. Realtors and property managers are probably your best bet besides talking to someone else that's doing rental properties. If you know anybody in your community or family or friends, like, hey, I want to buy something, and start talking and start looking, and then that's a good place to start. I know it's pretty vague. You can find a good deal anywhere. You can find a good deal in Bloomfield. You can find a good deal in any state across the country. It's not specific to a town, and it doesn't even have to be the perfect deal. It's more important that you find a deal. There's things like, I like just housing rental, like with the standard home versus commercial property, and for starting out. Commercial property, warehouses or office space. Office space can be a little questionable. If that business moves out, is someone else going to suit to move in? If a tenant moves out, there's someone else probably. There's more people around. So there's things. LoopNet is a app you can download, or a website you can look at, and any real estate thing, Zillow, you can start finding, but really check with a realtor and local property manager, or ask someone else that's in real estate. All right, Eric, go ahead.
Yes, do you see any trends in the next 5 years that you want to share?
Ah,
I'm referring to like the '08 crash. That was kind of a, black swan event.
yeah. Is there any trends in the next 5 years to be aware of? You know, that's an excellent question, and I think this is going to be an exceptional. Right now is actually probably an exceptional time to buy, because I think interest rates affect property values tremendously, and when interest rates are high, property values are lower, and when interest rates drop, the property values go up. So the perfect time is right before the rates really adjust, which is right now. Over the next 3-6 months is probably, and that's about the only trend that I hadn't not zoned in real great. I guess I'd like to ask your opinion on that as well. You're in real estate. Something you're noticing?
I didn't have anything specific in mind,
Yep.
but I agree with you. So
Okay, yeah.
I see more mortgage rates dropping in the near future and continuing to drop.
A lot of properties are purchased on a 5-year locked rate. So especially bigger deals like apartment complexes, investors will come in, they'll buy it, they'll lock it in for 5 years, and if interest rates go down, great, but if they go up like they did the last 5 years, the property values really don't go up that much, and then if they have to refinance from 3% to 7%, the payments don't work anymore. So they have to dump it, and you can find deals where they've got to get out of it, and because the rates are still too high. And that's what's been happening the last couple years because of interest rates, and there's deals like that out there. People just need to get out of them, and they'll sell them. But yeah, that's something to keep in mind. All right, I'm going to wrap up. Everybody can stick around as long as they wish and chat as well. So just a reminder, we're doing once a month meetups here, the second Tuesday of every month at 5:30 p.m. We're going to do it for a whole year and go from there. There is cards in the back that have the dates on them. Make sure you grab one so you know when the next one is. There is a YouTube channel that we're going to drop this on, and you can see the previous one, and we'll continue to do that. So feel free to jump in there, subscribe, share it if you know someone else that might find it interesting. And thank you for coming. Hope to see you next time. Bring a friend. So, thanks everybody.